and I'll be the moderator on behalf of UniMind Prep team. Our speaker today is Bara, who gives lectures and workshops for students, parents, educators, business people, and creative professionals seeking high performance results at school, work, and life. And today she's going to talk about what is test anxiety and how to manage it. So I'm very excited to hear what she has to share with us. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A box and we'll take time to answer at the end of the session. I hope you enjoy it. Bara, I give the floor to you now.
Great, thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you and your team. My name is Bara Sapir. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a gorgeous day outside right now, and I'm so glad I can spend a little bit of time with you to talk about your upcoming test. And like Nelly said, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A or raise your hand so we know, so we can answer them. Let me tell you a little bit about me and tell you what I want to do today. So in today's webinar, I want to unpack the typical test taking experience for students and introduce mindset resources to eliminate test anxiety, build confidence, and increase focus. And I want to tell you a little bit of my background so you understand how I came upon this. I am the CEO of City Test Prep. We were called Test Prep New York, Test Prep San Francisco, and for a little bit of time, Test Prep Jerusalem, which is where I started after working at Princeton Review for many years. And what I found was that the two things that held students back from performing their best were their mindset and their time management. So I had come from an arts background. My background was fine arts. I was designing museums in New York. I was in art school. I was an art professor. And what I found was that as an artist, I can get into something called the zone. You might have heard in sports or in chess or in playing music that getting into the zone is the place that you want to enter. And I was able to do that really easily because I was making art 8 hours a day. And I found that, or I thought that if I can get my students into a test taking zone, that's going to actually help them. And so I explored a bunch of different modalities, which we'll talk about today. And I've been working on these modalities with students for the past, probably since 2000, but officially as a company since 2005. So I've been working in the test prep world since 1992. I've been spending a lot of time with students, taking tests. The GMAT and GRE, I feel, are second nature to me. And it brings me great joy not only to give students the ability to score amazing on tests, our tutors help them with that, but also to give them back themselves so that a student can enter a test fully focused, fully engaged, and then they have these skills for life, not only in school, but beyond. So today we're going to look at some of the methods that we use with students. I'm going to teach you some takeaway events so that you can feel more focused, more engaged, more present when you take your test. And these are the same things that sports psychologists use with high-performing athletes, and also some stress management techniques and some organizational tools to think about the months, weeks, and the days leading up to your test, even the day of your test. So on test day, what you want to be thinking about is being anxiety-free. And we're going to talk about some anxiety strategies for that, anxiety relief strategies, and also talk about a bunch of calming, focusing, and confidence building methods, including visualization, mindfulness, and time management. So my goal is to turn a good score into a great score. So what does the GMAT or GRE really test? So think about it. These are some math skills that you might have learned in middle school. At least that's when they teach them in the United States. You have a bunch of grammar. In fact, some of the grammar that you need to know on the GMAT is based on American English formal writing, not necessarily based in colloquial speak. So if what's on the test is so important, the question is, why haven't you learned all of this on the job, right? Many of you who are taking the test probably have had a few years of experience. You haven't learned this on the job. Or why haven't you learned this in undergrad? So if we study hard, the conventional wisdom is that high test scores are going to inevitably follow. But if you're unmotivated to study, or you're hampered by fear of failure, or if you feel nervous and anxious and unable to focus on what you're doing, often that means that you're not performing to your potential, and your scores are going at it. Is that tests don't only measure what you know, they also measure how well you take tests. So if you think back yourself at a time when you knew all the material, you had studied your diagnostics, you were showing up for them, and you were scoring great, but then you went into the test and you couldn't focus, you couldn't engage with the material, you're looking at it and saying, I saw this in the book, I've seen questions like this, but I'm not able to actually perform. You might even feel like a deer in headlights. That's the part of what we're going to be looking at today. It's the intangible, it's the soft skills, right? Some people call it emotional intelligence, but it's the how well you take tests, not the content itself. Although the content obviously is super important and as important. So it's really as much about your mindset as it is about content mastery. Because just because you're feeling calm and self-assured and focused, if you don't know the material, you're not going to be able to necessarily score as well either. So you have to have this bridge and this marriage between positive mindset and content mastery, and also test taking strategy. You want the best form and strategy, because these tests are all reasoning tests as much as they are about understanding what equations you need to use in the math, and what how to conjugate verbs, or understanding the prepositions. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can enter the test focused and calm so that you don't risk a subpar performance. And we're going to talk about how do you achieve that, because just because you want to feel calm doesn't mean that your whole body is on board. So the most important thing about your performance is your presence. And when I say presence, it's about being centered, focused, and in the now. It means that you go in, and that if you hear something far away, you might notice it, but it's not going to disrupt the pattern that you're in focusing on the test. It means that when you're engaged with that particular question, it's like a dance. If you're dancing with a partner, let's say you're doing swing or waltz, or any of these old types of partner dancing, that you're actually focused on your partner. You're actually focused on the question and not looking around the room to see what else is happening. So have you felt any of these things when you've gone in to take a test? Anxiety, panic, sad, forgetful, hungry, or full, or overwhelmed, or bloated, dread, nervousness? These are the ways that anxiety, or not feeling in our desired state, will affect how we perform. And 30 to 35% of college students are handicapped by test anxiety. So if you think about yourself and whether you have felt test anxiety before, even if you feel a tiny little bit, you want to take care of it. And I'll talk about why you want to take care of that in a little bit, because it's going to impact your entire performance, right? Now, if you're handicapped, and that's 30 to 35%, it's rare that I have met anyone who's never felt any kind of anxiety before. So we've all felt it, and a third of the people, a little more than a third, actually feel handicapped by it. And stress relief techniques have been shown to increase scores up to 12% statistically, but we've seen much larger score improvements. I've worked with students literally the weekend before the GMAT and did not work on any content whatsoever, and they've gone up 230 points, right? Just by getting back into themselves, feeling grounded, and having that presence. So why do we feel anxiety? So in 1948, B.F. Skinner wrote Superstition and the Pigeon. And what he found was that they fed the pigeon at normal intervals. They were completely regulated, and the food would come in, and whatever the pigeon was doing at the moment that the food came in, it made note of it, and then it kept doing it. So if any of you have a pet or an animal of any kind, you'll know that, like, for example, if I give my dog, whenever I say to my dog, look, she knows to look because a treat's going to happen. I have trained her to do that. So the anxiety that's being talked about here is comparable to what happened with the pigeon. So let me explain. The parcel of food, when the pigeon got it, it would move its wings or its legs and it turned into an elaborate dance. And the pigeon thought that that elaborate dance was what actually produced the food piece. So the way that this has translated to superstition and anxiety for students is that at one point, most students have felt a little nervous, a little excited, a little anxious before going in to take a test. And they were totally, completely prepared. So they take the test and they notice afterwards that they scored great. It was not a big deal. They scored great. They felt great. The mind not recognizing that the anxiety was not what produced the great result. The mind thinks, you know what, next time I'm actually going to be more nervous than I was the time before, because that's what actually is helping me get the higher score. So on the unconscious realm, in the subconscious, the mind thinks that that is what caused the high score. So the next time the student goes in to take a test, they feel even more nervous and they've got no control over it unless they actually engage directly in trying to get over the anxiety or getting over the anxiety. And so this keeps on going, and it's like a domino, and eventually the student can have a chronic behavior issue and full-blown anxiety. So that's what we want to prevent. So for some of you who are probably in undergrad or a little bit older taking these tests, if you think back where you first felt anxiety, that was when the behavior pattern started, and you want to stop it at any point you recognize that it's there. Like if you have a friend who's anxious, you want to have them take care of it, because the next time that the stimulus is similar, that anxiety is just going to rev up. So what does a tennis ball have to do with the GRE and GMAT? So if you think about playing tennis, we have the court, we have the ball that goes over the net, we have a lot of rules, right? A lot of rules with the tennis ball. Has to stay in certain lines and how you hit it, and you have to stay in certain lines. So it's similar to going in to take a test, because when you go in to take a test, you have the test center, or you could be doing this at home. And certainly when you're taking this at home, you have all of the different rules and regulations and what can be in the room with you and what can't be in the room with you, and how it's going to be scored. And that's the outside. That is the outside game. Whether you're playing tennis or you're going in to take a test, what you also have is the inner game, right? The inner game is, how do you feel the day that you're going in to take the test? How do you feel the day the day that you're going to play this match, right? So common tennis taker complaints might be something like, I practiced this and practiced this, but then when I went to play, everything I totally flubbed. I totally was not able to do what I've been practicing all this time, right? The same thing happens with the GMAT GRE. So a test taker and someone who's playing a sport are very similar. And there's an inner game and the outer game. So we can't change the outer game, right? You're not going to go into the test center and want to rearrange things, or even have a conversation with GMAC or ETS about all of the rules and regulations, but you can change the inner game. It's similar, actually, now that I think of it, it's similar like if you're having an issue with a friend, right? You've got the outer issue that's happening, but it's you who needs to change. You can't expect someone else to change. You have to change the inner climate and the inner landscape in order to approach things differently. And it's the same thing with taking a test. So for example, if you're someone who always says, I never do well on tests, I can't tell you how many times I hear this from people. I'm not a good test taker. Well, what you're doing is you're convincing yourself, the inner game, you're basically telling the inner self, the inner mind, that I'm not good at taking tests. Instead, if you say, wow, I've had a lot of opportunities to practice taking tests and I'm going to do better each time I take it, you're twisting the way that you see it, and you're letting your mind know, you're putting them on alert that it's not going to be the way that it was before. It's not going to be that you're telling yourself that you're not good on tests. You're not convincing yourself. In fact, you're actually hypnotizing yourself that you don't do well on tests. You're actually doing something called growth mindset and moving towards seeing yourself in a way that you can do something, you can accomplish something. And there's a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And what she talks about here is she talks about this growth mindset and why it's really important to think of yourself the way that you want to see yourself. And then everything is going to collude. The universe conspires in order to get you closer to the way that you want to see yourself and the way that you want to be. So the way that it does that is that it fires the inner critic. Okay, we're always engaged in a back and forth in telling ourselves that we can't do something or we can do something. We want to move towards we can, and that this is a growthful journey, and that mistakes are just lessons to learn, and that the inner critic is something that we want to fire. So you want to fire the inner critic because you want to have methods to be effective on test day. You want to fire because you want to have strategies that you can get over the anxiety. So let's talk about some of this success plan, and then let's get into actually experiencing it. And because I can't see you, I'm going to just trust that you're going to do the exercises that we do together. And you can even make comments. I believe there's a comment box, and you can say how you experienced it. So your success plan needs to include, obviously, content. It needs to also consider, how do you best learn? Are you a visual learner? Are you an oral learner? And how you can set yourself up for this growth mindset is to identify, this is how I best do things and I best learn, and then implement it with your actual study plan. Then you want to evaluate what content you need to master. If you're already scoring, let's say on the GMAT 700 and you want a 750, well, you don't need to start at square one. What you want to do is see, where is it that you're not scoring what you need to? Where is it that you're not understanding? Where is it that your reasoning is not making sense? Then you want to have that strategy. You want to deal with time management, possibly your reading speed. You want to take a reading speed test and make sure that's not slowing you down. Have a balanced lifestyle. And then the last piece, which is the quickest, in fact, we're going to go over some things soon, that this might actually be enough of what you need to get over. So we're going to do a couple of exercises here. You're going to watch me. I'm going to stop the share, and I want you to see me fully. So let's see if I can be seen fully. I hope everyone can see me. So what I want you to do is I want you to stand up. Okay, I'm gonna do this with you. We're gonna twist around, and it's called the twist around, or the spin around. So I want you to stand up, and I want you to put your arms ahead of you, and I want you to keep your feet planted on the ground, but twist to the right and notice where you stop, and look at your finger and notice where your finger points. So you notice yourself there, and then you'll twist back around to where you're front again, and you put your arm down. Okay. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath. Move your shoulders a little bit. Okay. And in your mind's eye, only in your mind's eye, I want you to imagine that you're twisting again. You're twisting around. You're not actually doing it. You're just doing this in your imagination. You're twisting around to where you first stopped. Super easy. Now go 30% farther. No big deal. You're there. See yourself there, and then twist back to where you're facing me again. Your arm is down. It's all in your mind's eye. And when you're facing me again, I want you to open your eyes and take a deep breath. Move your shoulders a little bit, and then close your eyes. In your mind's eye, in your imagination, you're going to twist back around again to where you first stopped. 30% farther. And now go 50% farther from where you first stopped. Super easy. It's in your imagination. You could do anything. See yourself there, and then twist back around to where you're facing me again. And when you get there, I want you to take a deep breath in, open your eyes, move your shoulders a little bit. Great. Now close your eyes. In your mind's eye, only in your mind's eye, I want you to twist around to where you first stopped. Go 30% farther, 50% farther, and then keep going. You're like a cartoon character superhero. It's kind of funny. It's kind of weird. Why are you doing this? We're supposed to talk about the GMAT, but you're going all the way around and around and around and around and around. It's kind of weird, kind of funny, going around and around and around and around, around and 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 around until you start to feel yourself slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, going around and around, round and around and around, around and around, round and round, until finally you feel yourself slow down and stop. And then you feel the liminal pull, the liminal like tug in your stop, but you're starting to feel that tug in the other direction. And you're going to go around and around going around and around. And then you're picking up speed, going around and around, and around 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 and around, until finally you start to feel yourself slowing down, until finally you're where you started, fully stopped, grounded, in place. You open your eyes, you take a deep breath, move your shoulders a little bit. Okay, and now, again, I want you to actually lift up your arm. I want you to twist around to the right again to where you first twisted. And I want you to notice how far you go. Notice how far you go. And in the chat, write what you noticed. Did you go farther? Did you not go as far? What did you notice in your movement around? Now, most people will go farther. So I don't know if anyone's written in the chat yet. No one's written in the chat yet. But most people will go farther. And why do you think you've gone farther? Have we done calisthenics? Have we done yoga? We haven't done any of that. But what actually happens, right, it's further and easier, Karina, exactly. So it was easier because in your mind's eye, you were able to see yourself there. And the way that you can apply that to actually going in to take a test is to see yourself going in and walking to the test center or going into the room that you're going to take the test, if it's at home, whatever it is, and replaying it so that when you actually go, you've created the mindset that you're going in, you feel confident, you feel nourished, you feel grounded and emotionally regulated. So when you see yourself there, there's no difference than actually doing it, right? So it's like when you see a really scary movie and you get scared, but you know that it's on the screen. There's a whole field of study. And why is it that we feel that way? It's a philosophical question. Like, we know that what's happening on the screen isn't even really happening in real time, but we get caught up because our imagination is so powerful. So I want to show you another way that our mind is super powerful. And if you look at these lemons, I want you to imagine these lemons that we have right in front of us and put them, like, imagine that they're in your hand, right? Imagine these lemons are in your hand and now smell the lemon. Imagine you're smelling it. Or imagine that you like cut it open the way that you see here and that you put it in your mouth. So for many people, when you do this, you're activating your imagination. So the mind is so powerful and you want to harness it. We want to get that to a place where you feel you're confident, emotionally regulated, grounded, focused, and calm, right? Whatever is your desired state, you want to practice that desired state when you go in, and you want to have stimuli like imagining yourself going to the test. And I know that this seems really probably very elementary, but it's profound, and the effects are also profound. So here are some other strategies during the test that we're going to go over some of them. I'm going to tell you what each one of them are, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. And then I do want to hear from all of you what questions you have, what your particular situation is. So who's your hero in visualization? The idea of imagining yourself spinning around and the idea of holding those lemons, that is a kind of visualization. That is activating your imagination to see yourself a certain way and then moving that way towards what you want. Another way of feeling better when you go in to take the test is something like called anchors and the backward spin. And this is drawn from something called neuro-linguistic programming. And the idea of NLP, I know that in Europe, Dan Brown is a very well-known NLP practitioner. I believe he had a TV show, or he might have had a TV show, but you can use it and not have it be parlor tricks or magic tricks. You can actually use NLP in a way that you can see yourself in the way that you want yourself to be. So, for example, let's say you have let's say you see a question on the test, like you always see a certain question, whatever it is. It could be a math question, it could be a reading comprehension question. And whenever you see it, you feel this panic, like, how do I do this? Or what was that equation? Am I sure I know it? So what you'll notice is that when you feel that there's often a movement in your body. I feel it, like, I feel like, when you go to an amusement park or you see an amusement park and they have that big mallet and they hit a thing on the bottom and it has to go up. That's what it feels like. I feel like something in my in my stomach just goes all the way to the top of my head. And then it subsides and then it comes up again. So it's a kind of rolling, a kind of a movement that moves around like this. So imagine for a moment a time when you have felt that panic or anger or discomfort and that quickness. Sometimes when I'm driving, if someone gets too close, I'll also feel that movement in my body, like it's energy just moving. So you harness that energy and then close your eyes and imagine it's going in the opposite direction. And if anyone wants, I have a MP3 of this, and I also have it written up. So you can also, you'll have my information later. I can send that to you. So you imagine it in the opposite direction, right? And then I keep my eyes closed for it. I'm going to keep my eyes closed right now. Breathe into it, and then you imagine a time when you felt really inappropriate laughter. Like you really shouldn't be laughing, but there you are, you're laughing and you can't stop it. It's just uncontrollable. And even like the naughtiness of it makes you laugh even more, right? So you throw that in the mix. And then I want you to think of a place where you feel really comfortable, really safe. It could be on a beach, it could be when you're hiking, it could be on a kayak, it could be walking through city streets, whatever it is. Imagine an environment where you feel comfortable, safe, and calm. It can be different for everybody. And then I want you to think of a person that you love, and you want to throw that in the mix. It's like you're just lapping each of those on, and then you place it back into yourself. You place that movement back into yourself. And again, this is all in the imagination. It's igniting the imagination. It's harnessing your mind power to make this feel more comfortable and safe. And then from there, you take a deep breath, and that nervousness should subside. The other techniques on here, EFT is called tapping. That is a modality. We won't do it today. It takes a little bit of time, but I just want to introduce you to it and have you be aware of it. It's a tapping technique that combines acupuncture without needles, reframing. Reframing is when you see something in a certain way. Like, for example, if I break a dish, I can get super upset about it, or I could say, you know what, I've been wanting to get a new set of dishes. I'm moving closer to it. It's actually not dissimilar to the growth mindset, right? It's a way of changing your orientation, changing your perspective. And we're going to do some heart math breathing. I don't know if we're going to, maybe I'll show you, if we have time, I'll show you the bilateral stimulation. But binaural beats help with bilateral stimulation. It's when your right brain and your left brain are able to sync and across the midline of your body. So actually, briefly, I can show you that. I'm just going to grab something here. Like if you have something that you can hold like a lemon or keys, and you just go back and forth across your midline and breathe, look ahead, focus on a far away something, you'll start to feel yourself decompress and emotionally regulate. So we've talked about growth mindset, and we'll do some heart math breathing in just a little bit. Okay, so let's do the heart math breathing. So if you're feeling that when you go in to take your test or give a talk or have an interview, whatever it is, if you find that when you go in, you're not feeling fully regulated and you want to just feel calm, feel focused, what you want to do is focus on something far away from you. So you're looking at the computer screen now. I invite you to look away from the computer screen and look ahead, look at something in the distance. Focus your eyes on it, put your hand over your heart and even over your navel, right? So you've got these 2 points of contact with your body. And then look ahead at that point and breathe, and breathe as if you're breathing from your heart, not that you're breathing from your lungs. And we'll just spend a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds, just a little bit of time going through this where you're breathing. And give yourself permission to just allow your shoulders to relax. Feeling good. Just focus on that point far away, or it could be close, but you just want to focus on the point and imagine that you're actually breathing from your heart. So all of these are just techniques to get you more grounded, more in your body. You might notice, like I noticed, that my shoulders relax. I notice that my body feels grounded. My voice is a little bit lower because I've dropped in, as they say in the Bay Area. I've dropped into what I'm doing. And you want to just breathe, focusing on that point. Feeling good. If it's not completely getting you to where you want to be, you can again think of a place where you feel really safe and comfortable, what it felt like to have the warm sun on you, or to be skiing down the slope, or to be hanging out with family or friends. Like, just imagine a time when you felt really comfortable, and just continue to breathe from your heart to that point. Feel free to write down how you feel from that. And this is something that you want to start maybe doing it for 2 minutes, but once you train yourself to do it, you're basically doing something a little bit like anchoring, which was one of the other NLP terms that I just had on the previous slide, which means that you're creating pathways to an emotional response. You're creating pathways to a desired state. So if your desired state is to be focused, calm, and grounded, this is going to help with that. Okay. Great. There's a question that I'm going to answer in just a moment. Okay, so the panic attacks we've done. So you want, if you're feeling that that's a typo, that should be meditation, not mediation. Maybe you do need mediation, but it should be meditation. So meditation, nutrition, exercise, clean air, sleep, and socializing. These are all things that you also want to have as part of your study plan. A lot of times students will come to me and they work full time and then they study full time and then they're really frazzled. And so what we do is we talk to students about how do we have something more balanced, because your mind is always working. So if you have a little time away from what you're studying and you actually allow your mind the time to process on its own and come to its own conclusions. So it's super important to have socializing and have enough sleep and get clean air and really actually even be grateful, like having a gratefulness journal, writing a gratitude journal, writing at night and in the morning. This is all things that allow you to get back into yourself, back to regulation, back to feeling calm and confident. So someone in the chat room has asked, what do you do? There's all these stress management exercises, but if there's no fast results, then how do you stay motivated and do these exercises every day? So part of it, anonymous attendee, is that you want to find techniques that are working for you. You want to find techniques that are going to be fast when you need them. And some of that is actually gearing up. It's kind of like if you're planning to do a marathon, you do all these little sprints, you do all this, you don't do marathon after marathon after marathon, but you want to prepare yourself for the event, finding which exercises. Now, I find that the exercises that work the best are the ones that you're actually tracking your own experience. So if you know that you feel dysregulated, you have a whole toolbox of how to deal with that dysregulation. Now, sometimes like meditation is an amazing tool, but the challenge with meditation is that you have to actually work up to gain all the benefits, right? So the least amount of time is probably a week or 2 weeks, whereas some of these exercises that I'm showing you now are actually immediate. So the heart breathing, that's immediate. The bilateral stimulation, you want to put something like a lemon or a set of keys in your hands. That also, those are pretty immediate, but it's about being focused and tracking yourself and then figuring out what works and then having that be your go-to. And having a toolbox is super important. So in terms of how to stay motivated, I find that having your why, like, why are you doing this? Why are you wanting to not be as anxious or as stressed out, right? So if you have the why, you can go back to it, and that should be shouldn't say try, but you want to have a reason of why you're doing this. The reason isn't that you want to just do well on your test. The reason is that you want to enter a school that you feel really great about. You could develop as a person, meet people that are going to be life-changing friends for life. That's really the why, more than I really want to do amazing on this test. You want to do amazing on this test because of something else. These are all hoops. And so getting to the why, I believe, is usually a potent way of getting there. So months prior, meditation and mindfulness, those are pretty synonymous terms. You also want to think about your nutrition and how you're eating. Long term, you also want to think about how you're eating the week before the test, the day before the test, and also exercise. So any kind of lifestyle changes that you want to take to support your test taking event are probably going to be analogous to lifestyle changes you might want to make generally. Like obviously nutrition, exercise, fresh air are things that are always going to be beneficial to you. So you want to start with one small change per week or per month, and not try to change everything at once, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Then on the weeks prior, you can think more about, well, how is my body going to feel good? How am I going to feel good? And you could think about massage, other pampering. Depending where you live, those things are accessible because of COVID or not. I just went for my first massage in a year and a half, I think, last week. And it was so nice to just allow my body to be worked on and just feel like I was taking care of myself and doing self-care. You also want to create a schedule. You can do this the weeks prior. You want to think, when am I going to be studying? When am I going to be seeing friends? When am I going to be doing activities that are not part of studying? And have that be in a schedule that has a little bit of wiggle room, because you don't want to get down on yourself if you're not able to keep to it exactly. But it's all about the small steps and not thinking about a complete overhaul, right? We want to actually have something that's sustainable. Then things to incorporate: sound therapy. And sound therapy can be really as simple as there's music that you listen to that you feel grounds you, or music that you listen to that you can be like, you know, it energizes you. Like, so think about your own music. There's also binaural beats, which can help you get into the zone, but binaural beat technology is a way of bilateral stimulation where you hear it on different sides, and it has different wavelengths that you entrain yourself to get into a state that is more conducive to being present and focused and relaxed. Visualization, hypnosis. For the person who had written the question in before, the hypnosis is a way to actually quickly get to the state and the desired effect by moving through the critical faculty, the thing that you're resistant against. And it helps you make the changes in your unconscious mind so that you do it in your conscious mind. And there's other modalities. The days before, you want to make sure what your food availability is. And even though this seems like completely elementary, you want to make sure that you're eating really healthy food, not junk food, not highly processed food. And if you normally eat highly processed food and you normally eat junk food, you don't want to change it right before the test either, right? You want to make sure that whatever you're doing, that there's no big changes, but you want to buffer up and bolster the way that you do the things that you do, making sure your sleep is good, making sure that your night before the test, that day that you get enough sleep. And if you're going to the test center, make sure you chart the path there, make sure that you've got layers, right? That you've got layers handy so that you're not going to feel too cold or too hot. And the days before, you can plan a celebration. You can even imagine the celebration with your family and friends, your partner, colleagues, whomever, after the test. Like, how are you going to celebrate doing well? Seeing yourself at the test center. Remember, we talked way in the beginning of this talk about seeing yourself go there, seeing yourself take the test, and even seeing the score that you want on the screen, imagining that it's there. So again, these are similar things that you can incorporate: visualization, hypnosis, sound therapy, the tapping. Now, the night before, you definitely want to sleep and eat well. The night before the test, sleep well. And you want to call on your superpowers. If you've done your work, if you've done your study, if you've done everything, your diagnostics, you want to make peace with, you're going in, there's not going to be anything new, and have completion. You want to have that full completion. Then the day of the test, you want to implement whatever support tools that you've ignited through your prep process, and then ride the wave to greatness. So I want to just circle back around to music. Music can be an effective solution according to the Journal of Student Development. Sedative music paired with imagery proved to be a very successful strategy for reducing anxiety among college students. So you can go on YouTube. We have on the City Test Prep channel, we've got meditations that you can actually listen to. It's curated music that we produced that has binaural beats to help you get into the best test taking time zone. We even have an audio course that also has all of these different pieces, practices, and we're not the only ones who have this. We have one for the GRE and the GMAT, but there's other programs, and if you go on YouTube, you can find them. And I want to conclude with seeing if there is one question here. So I want to see what that question might be, but I want to invite folks that are on the call to have a free strategy session with me. If you have a particular issue, you just go to this URL. I'm happy to meet with you and talk about your individual case and talk about tools that you might be able to implement. Also, if you get in touch with me, I'll be able to send you some of the exercises that we've done, or I can send to Udemy and they can send it out one way or the other. So you can have that. And let me see what this question is. So Fatima says, I can't focus on anything except study during preparation for an exam or any test. My psyche doesn't allow me even to eat something. I've tried a lot to focus on my health during the exam or test, but I can't. So I'm not sure, this sounds like a comment and a question together. So obviously, if I'm looking at your languaging here, so that you can't focus and that you've tried. So it's really coming back to the why and understanding that by implementing changes that are going to be useful and helpful, that is part of your preparation. So understanding that your preparation is not just content, but it also has to do with your health, and that in order to perform your best, you have to have the optimal health that you're striving for, I would imagine. So even though it appears that like you've somehow convinced your unconscious mind that all you can do is like focus, obviously you're doing other things like you're breathing, right? Like at some point you're eating, you're not going to not eat for 6 weeks straight or 8 weeks straight or 3 months, right? So you are doing those things and setting aside the time. It's in part, it's recognizing that is as important for you to actually perform your best and coming to terms with that. The other thing that you might want to consider is spending more time studying. So if you normally are thinking that you're going to study for 6 weeks, make that 8 weeks so that you can actually intersperse it with the things that you need to do. It could be that you're not focused on these other things because you haven't given yourself enough time to do it. I'm not sure. We can discuss that if you'd like. So here's my information. The 917 is my text and cell phone, and also my email. The best way to reach me, honestly, is text and email. And so in terms of coffee, it helping you concentrate and study, but you also believe it triggers your anxiety. Depending on how much before the test you have to go, you might want to try other modes, other things that might help you concentrate. I think that the breathing exercise will help you decompress. There's also some exercises like you can press here. There's also a point on your knee, like your inner knee. You could look that up, which will also help improve focus. You can also give yourself very limited time periods of when you're going to be studying. Are you sure that you're studying in max 45-minute blocks? If you're studying more than 45-minute blocks, that might be difficult. If the coffee is triggering, you might try chicory or teas. You might try something that might jolt your system, disrupt your system. You can even put a rubber band on your wrist and just flick the rubber band just to just give you a pop. So there's other different physical things that you can do to help you get into the zone. And part of it is just being true to yourself and notice, like, if you're not concentrating, what is it that the time was too long? Is it that you're not super engaged with the material? Is your why not important enough? So I'm going to stop the share here and going to see what else there is to answer. I don't know, Nellie, if you have questions, you can tell us what
Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear all these advices, and I think we heard a lot of helpful things. I'm not taking any tests anytime soon, but I'm definitely going to try some of these techniques.
Yeah, you know, the amazing thing about this work is that once you learn how to regulate, you're still going to have situations in your life that you need to emotionally regulate, whether it's a difficult conversation, an interview, a presentation, a difficult news that you have to share with somebody. Like, we always have things in our life, and the test is a metaphor not only of how you're going to be a business professional, but also life, right? Like, do you take risks? Do you take really like calculated risks? Do you work too fast? Do you work too slow? So the test is a really amazing metaphor, microcosm of how we move through business and how we move through life. So these skills also similarly will help you not only on the test, but in situations beyond the test and in school and in life.
Thank you very much. And maybe one last question we have from the audience. What do you believe is the most common mistake a lot of test makers make that maybe test takers make that amplifies their anxiety?
That's probably test takers. So the common mistake that test takers make is that I think there's a few I want to mention. One of them I mentioned earlier, that when people go into the test, they psych themselves out. They'll say things like, I'm not a good test taker, right? And so that doesn't do anything except you telling yourself something. So it's a really self-defeating, self-effacing process. And, you know, we do this all the time. Like people who are on an eating plan, if they don't stick to the plan, they say, I've been bad. It's like, no, you ate something that you wanted because you wanted to satisfy a particular urge and need. So by giving yourself the opportunity to reframe and say, you know, there was some reason I did this. It served me in some way. I have another way that I want to show up on the test and be on the test. And if you pivot towards that direction, I think that is really useful. I think that it's extremely, having these negative self-belief patterns can just tear you down. So part of it is like that negative self-talk, I think test takers do, and I think that winds up elaborating on anxiety. There's other things that test takers do, but I see that one as almost like that's like the gateway to anxiety, right? Like, because you're convincing yourself that you feel a certain way, so you can just as easily pivot and have a different perspective.
Yeah, it makes sense. So believe in yourself, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for everyone for joining. I think it's time to close our session, but we're going to send you the recording of this webinar. I hope it was very useful to you. Thank you, Bara, once again. Have a nice day, everyone.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.